Hi class, I want to talk to you a little bit about analyzing poetry today. So here's an example of what I did. And if you're like me, you look at this and you think, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. I don't know what happened. I have to admit to you, as I was looking at this poem, I was a little overwhelmed and scared to get started when I was looking at it when it was nice and clean like this. But I thought, nope, if I'm asking my students to do it, I have to do it. So I'm going to talk to you about first what I'm going to be asking you to do. When I ask you if a poem is good, right, or perhaps bad, I'm really asking you, what are the techniques the poet is making, and what is the effect of the poet? So the effect is kind of your heart feeling or your head feeling. Did you like it, right? This is much more personal. Techniques are much more, and I guess we could say here, subjective. Techniques are much more objective. So these techniques are going to be more like author's craft and poetic terms that we use. Now I'm going to give you guys a handout that looks like this. That's going to have a bunch of the poetry terms. There are quite a bit of them. I don't expect you to know all of them off the bat, but a lot of them you've already studied before. And I did create a Quizlet where you guys will be able to practice some of those. So as I'm looking at my poem, I'm going to be asking myself, what are the techniques, what is the effect? So I always start with the effect as I read through the poem. So I read through this poem, The Weary Blues by Langston Hughes, that we looked at before. And then I gave myself a few minutes to just do a little bit of free write here. I'm going to read you guys my free write. This was just about 3 minutes of writing. I said, the effect of the poem is quite strong. I'm not sure when I first heard it, but I've always loved Langston Hughes. I think I love the bittersweetness of the poem. The feeling I get when I hear certain chords of music filled with sharps and dissonance. It pains my soul, yet it's so beautiful that I'm drawn into it. I think I've always loved the beauty and pain relationship. It reminds me of grieving my dad and Jacob because they had died when I was 10, and how brutally painful it was, and at the same time it left me with so much comfort and learning. So that was kind of the affect for me of the poem. I like this poem. I like Langston Hughes. I really enjoy reading his poetry. So I would say yes for the affect. But you might disagree, and that's okay. Then I had to look at the techniques, and that's where you're going to see all my marking and writing. So the first thing that I did was a blue pen. You can kind of see the different colors. So you see this blue pen I went through, and I was like, oh look, there's those rhyming lines. So that's a couplet. Okay. Oh, here. And then I noticed, oh, there's some of these words like ebony and ivory. I've heard that phrase before. It says the piano moans. I know what that is. So I didn't make too many marks the first time through. You can say, I wish I had died. Oh, look, dead. Is it really dead? I just made some initial marks because my first read through, I'm never super into it yet. So then I kind of took my pink one, which is my second work through. And I was like, okay, look, there's like a rhyme scheme here. There's like A, B, B, and then I was like, I don't think I'm doing this right, so I put a little question mark. I'd have to check that later on. And then I noticed, oh, there's Lenox Avenue. Okay, that's in Harlem. I remember reading that earlier, so I could look that up if I wanted to. So I kept going. I looked at what I had underlined earlier, moan, and I was like, ooh, that's personification, right? Because a piano is an inanimate object, and personification is like giving characteristics of a human to an inanimate object. That's personification. And then I also put connotation, and these words, personification and connotation, I am getting those out of my poetry terms here. So I'm like, yeah, I know that's something. What is it? And I can find the word for it here. So I'm like, the connotation of a word like that is like pain or weariness. And I thought, oh, weariness, that's interesting because that's, of course, the title, The Weary Blues. And then I kept going, sweet blues. Interesting, because sweet has a positive connotation. But then I have like rickety and raggy, which are negative. So that's interesting. So I kept going. I noticed his use of slang, right? Ain't, myself, all of those things here. And then I said, this here that he's kind of talking about, are these lyrics from somewhere else? Maybe a song that I don't know about from the Harlem Renaissance? I don't know. Then I look at here that the old piano is moaning again, right? Man is singing, the piano moans. I had this idea here of like, is the piano like a system of power or something he's trying to like fight against? I don't know, he can't change it. We'll see. That's why I always put a question mark, because I wasn't sure. So I go down, I see my favorite word in the English language, onomatopoeia, right? Thump, 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 where you hear this word as well as see it. And then down at the bottom here, I put that he went to bed, right? The day is over. It's kind of symbolic. He goes into the night, put to rest. And then I put, well, why dead, right? We used to say we slept well, like I slept like the dead, or I slept like a rock. But that seems really ominous. Then I put down at the bottom, maybe the tone that we're going for is kind of that the blues are beautiful but also painful. So then I kind of stopped for a second and I looked back over here at my poetry terms, and I tried to look for some other ideas that I may have missed, some things that I thought might be there, might not be there. And then I went back through one more time, and that's my green pen. So I went through with the green pen and I was trying to look for a theme now, because when you first read a poem, you're not going to get the theme. It takes a little bit to kind of get into the poem to see what the author is trying to say about the topic. And remember, I have theme right here. A theme is an idea about life that emerges from a poem. So what is he trying to say about life? I don't even think I wrote it down here. Oh, I did at the bottom. I said, although life, or like the day, is full of pain, heartache, and weariness, both physically and mentally, there, with an E, there is comfort in sharing it or voicing it or turning the pain into art. I think that's what he was going for. Mine's still a little bit messy, but I think that's his main idea. So then I was looking, right? I have this idea of weariness, heartache, and the blues, which is more, I don't want to say joyful, but an art form that you can get joy out of. And then I have the blues are kind of weary, and is that personification unto itself. As I'm going down, I'm looking more for my terms like, oh, I forgot about looking for imagery. But there's definitely some sight imagery here. There's some sound imagery here. There's more negative diction. I put a minus for negative there. More sound imagery. And then I was listening to Hamilton this morning because, you know, that's what I do. And it says, I can't be satisfied. And there's a song, right? Never be satisfied. I don't sing, but you guys know what I'm talking about. So I was just kind of making a connection to something else. So I can look over this, and I have a lot of different ideas here. And then I kind of go into my writing. Right, so here now I'm looking at technique. Up above, I was looking at effect. Now I'm looking at technique. So down here when I write, it's a little bit different type of writing. It took me a little bit longer to write, and I was using my active verb list that I gave you guys here. So active verbs, they have this one called literary essay that I really like, because we want to stop saying like the author shows or depicts or like, okay, I see depicts on my list here, but that's one that I see students use all the time. I want you to try using some words that you don't typically use. When you start out with a topic sentence that says your poet, whoever it is, or author, right? Hues, and then give me a verb, he invokes, right? And then what does he invoke? He invokes a poetic technique. So a technique that I've already found over here, a technique that I have on my list. He invokes visual imagery with pale, dull, pallor. See, then I have an actual example, the words from the poetry. And audio imagery using moan or thump, thump, thump. Then I use another kind of strong, I went over here and I was looking for a strong word, right? Delivering a melancholy tone of weariness expressed in the title. Yet he juxtaposes that downtrodden attitude with, what did I put here? With the diction, like ebony and ivory, which connotes, and again, I didn't think about that word until I looked over here and I was like, oh, that would be a good one to use. It's right here on my list. Which connotes a beauty to the sorrow. These words, reappropriated by Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney in the 80s, portrayed the beauty of black and white joining together. The weary blues takes sorrow and makes it into a song of beauty, indicating what blacks have done in so many areas of American life. Right? They've taken things like slavery and taken things like persecution or prejudice and really turned it into something beautiful. So at my last sentence, I'm trying to like bring it a bit broader into the world. So I know this is a lot, but this is what we're going to be practicing. I want you guys to be looking at poems like this, and we're going to be looking at more poetry in class. and how to analyze it, how to look at it for effect, how it impacted you as a reader and a listener, and then for technique. Why does it do that? Like, what moves is the author making in order to make that effect on you as the reader? I hope this helps, and we'll be practicing this quite a bit more in class. So as you can see with my technique writing here, I have quite a few examples of different techniques, imagery here, right? I say connotation, right? It connotes something. I also have juxtaposition. So I'm having or using very specific language of poetry techniques. I'm not just saying it does this or it does that. I'm giving really specific examples that come right from our Appendix A, what we talk about when we talk about poetry. And then, of course, at the end, I'm connecting it to that bigger picture, right? To my theme down at the end, right? This sorrow and beauty, connecting those two things together, which are my theme. So it has both craft and theme and how those two come together in the end. That's going to be part of what I'm asking you to do as you're looking at these poems.